Welcome to the Human Odyssey, the podcast about human-centered design. The way humans learn, behave, and perform is a science, and having a better understanding of this can help improve your business, your work, and your life. This program is presented by Sophic Synergistics, the experts in human-centered design. So, let's get started on today's Human Odyssey.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Human Odyssey podcast. Today, we're going to focus on stress, physical performance, recovery, and sleep. And we have just the person to help talk about these domains of human performance, a former colleague of mine at the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dr. Josh Hagen, who now is the performance scientist at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Hagen.
Good to see you, Reggie. It's been a long time.
Good to see you too. Tell the audience a little bit about, because you have an interesting background. You got your degrees at University of Cincinnati in tell me if I'm wrong, chemical engineering was your bachelor's degree, and then your master's was in engineering materials science at Cincinnati University of Cincinnati. So, and I recall that I was working for the School of Aerospace Medicine. You were working for 711th AFRL. Was it RH or RW at the time? I forgot.
Yeah, I started in RX and materials directorate, and then went to human effectiveness, RH from there.
Yeah, and you know, we developed the strong lab. Then I developed the Human Performance Satellite Lab, which was part of the School of Aerospace Medicine. So we had similar projects going on, not exactly the same, but very similar. We did a lot of collaboration together during our tenure at the Air Force Research Lab. So I'm going to hand it over to you for the audience. Tell us a little bit about how you went from the engineering background, what interests you to get in all of a sudden to human performance, and you've been doing that for quite some time now.
Yeah, I would say that I just got very, very lucky and met some really important people at really important times. And I think that's probably the story of most people in their careers, is like who you meet and who you work with and opportunities that you have are going to guide what your future really is. And I'd always had an interest in science and math. That's kind of how I got into engineering. And I got into chemical engineering literally just because I enjoyed chemistry. In high school, I liked math, so I was like, oh, I guess I'll just be a chemical engineer. And I got into the classes, and it's just kind of away we go. And then I was at the University of Cincinnati, and we had co-op programs where you could actually work as a chemical engineer. And you know, it was nice to make a little bit of money, but I realized that I was extremely bored by that job, and I didn't actually want to be a chemical engineer my entire life. Then I remembered I had a professor that I really enjoyed, British guy, Stephen Clarkson, and he had always had a graduate student that worked at Wright-Patterson doing military research. And I just walked into his office one day. I left work, just walked into his office. I was like, I want to do military research. I want to get my PhD, see where that takes me. And then it was really that AFRL journey that helped me a lot, because I love military. I wanted to get an application. So in material science, I got into like flexible wearable electronic devices. Not really knowing like why we're developing them, but like what's the material properties we need, and can we do like real-time blood measurement, real-time sweat measurement, kind of like thinking more towards the future. This was about a decade or so ago, or more than that actually. And then it was just a series of, again, really, really good opportunities where I started thinking, okay, if we create this patch that can do real-time blood analysis, like why are we doing it? What does it matter? Who's going to wear it? What's it mean? And so me as an engineer, I'm like, well, give me all the data and we'll figure it out later. Like, let's put every sensor known to man. And you and I did it in the lab. Like, we had firefighters in there. We put like dozens of sensors on them just to see.
Yeah, it's like,
and then realize
I remember that. that. Yeah, they look like Iron Man on the treadmill.
Yeah. And I was like, this must be a good idea. And then everybody was like, it's kind of weird. We should maybe think about what we're doing. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. So then I just got, and I'd always loved, again, military. I love athletics. I'm just a big sports fan, sports nut. And then just really started thinking, okay, if we have this information, what are we going to do with it? What's it mean? like starting thinking, like, let's do both. Let's develop technologies that don't exist, but then figure out how we're going to use them. And that's when I just had, we just had the wild idea of, well, let's just call Ohio State. Like, if there's any organization that has infinite resources to perform on any given Saturday, it's probably Ohio State football. It was 45 minutes away from us. So let's just call them up and say, what are you guys doing? We figured they had all the answers to all the problems. They thought the opposite. They thought the military had it all figured out. And it was that first meeting that you and I and Molly and some others went to, where we sat in their cafeteria and just started talking. And that's really what made the light bulb go off for me, is like, okay, we're all trying. If we think about elite performance or just high stress performance, which one of the same, we're all trying to do the same thing. And that's what I love about this industry, is like, we all have philosophically the same thing. Like, we will do anything and everything we can to help the people that we're privileged to work with. And
absolutely
nothing. It's technologies, data. So let's work together and figure out how to do it. And that's really just what snowballed into, I had the luckiest job ever. I just got super lucky. My educational background did not prepare me for it at all. Like, if anybody sees my degrees and what I'm doing, they'll be like, you shouldn't be here, which is true. But right. I think it's your experiences that's what's really valuable. Like, your degrees give you the foundation, but it's those experiences.
Correct.
And like what you do with it that really takes it off.
Absolutely. It's, as I tell people, you could have a degree in psychology, all of these majors at universities, there's an interdisciplinary mix, and they all have something in common, specifically like psychology, engineering, exercise physiology, because there's biomechanics involved, there's mathematics involved, there's data analysis involved, with your research methodology. So it's really about the hands-on applied experience, which we got a lot of that. I remember we were at Ohio State when we had the cooling shirt innovation that we tested there, using the accelerometers with some of those elite players. And you're right. You would think they have all the answers, but there's, they have many, many questions and gaps that need to be filled in different technologies that they haven't considered, specifically for recovery and injury prevention. So when at Ohio State with this Human Performance Collaborative, what does your day-to-day look like there, Josh? Are you more into the emphasis on recovery science, and how recovery science, if properly applied, there's a correlation with enhanced performance? Because obviously, if you can enhance recovery, you can make it happen faster for athletes. That also correlates to injury prevention. So what does your day-to-day look like in your current position? Is it more of still that recovery science?
It's definitely a huge pillar in what I do. We kind of set it up into similar like we did a decade ago, as those categories of the assess and the augment paradigms of human performance. And so I'd say it's a pretty equal mix between those three domains. And what our research group is the Human Performance Collaborative at Ohio State was actually founded by Dr. Morley Stone, who we both worked with for a long time.
Yeah.
He was the vice president of research before I came on, and he had this idea. In academia, you're typically stovepiped into like one professor, a bunch of grad students, maybe a little collaboration going on, probably not a whole lot. He's just like, what if you come in and you try to rally a bunch of really, really great professors and brains across the university into human performance? And how do we get multidisciplinary teams? Like you talked about, it takes all sorts of different domains: engineering, physiology, psychology, biomechanics. Like, all of these things are necessary to human performance. So we really need to come together and collaborate. And that's the foundation of the HPC. And so part of it is just creating those teams. The other part is like day-to-day research. We're still split up in those domains of sense. There's still a ton of work going on in physiological monitoring. Now it's just like, there's so many technologies out there. We still, to this day, validate pretty much any commercial product out there and try to just inform military and athletics communities of accuracy, validity, logistics, price, like why we're going to use it, what it means. So a lot of that sensor domain. The assess domain is like all the data analytics and data platforms and modeling and everything to take it from a bunch of data coming in from operators or athletes to cleaning the data, like pipelines, to where it's all automated, to where strength coach has automated reports, athletic trainer, team docs, Commander, everybody's got that at their fingertips. So that's now in a pretty good place. Like there's a lot of really exciting platforms like Microsoft platforms and Google platforms are just phenomenal with that. So now we come a long way, but now we've actually, instead of relying on third-party softwares to do this, which we used to, now we've created our own because the business intelligence tools are so advanced.
Oh yeah.
We can just do, so now we have like a Microsoft platform running our entire athletics department at Ohio State that was built from scratch from sports science department and on the research side. But then I would say my passion really is recovery science. And that's back when we worked together, like that first float tank we put in our facility. And again, that just super lucky things that have happened to me is right at that time I met Ohio State. I met Mark Stevenson with Daily Special Warfare. He was the head of high performance there. And he moved on to the NFL and did other things after that as well. And I still work with him on a daily basis. But that's where I learned, I didn't even know what recovery was. And I went down there and they had 4 float tanks. I was like, and this was 15 years ago. I was like, what the heck are those? That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been studied sort of since the 80s, but now they're pretty common. You can go to most major cities will have like a float spa out there. That was the first one. And there's like red light therapy and massage and meditation. And now we're into, so it's really cool. Like we're running studies still on those foundational methodologies, but now there's brand new things. Like there's vibroacoustic therapy that I'm super excited about. There's 2 companies we're working with right now. One's called, the company's Tersa, but Sava, SAVA is the name of this vibroacoustic pod that you get in. And foundationally, it's meditation and mindfulness. We all know how good that is for us. It's been studied forever. But now how do you get people to actually do it? And can we enhance that process? That's the same thing with float therapy, is you're taking as much sensory information away from the brain to get yourself to a deep state of meditation, relaxation, do a mental reset, do a physical reset. These vibroacoustic methodologies are similar in the fact that, but in this case, they're actually adding a sensory input. So vibration and sound at specific frequencies and powers and wavelengths that kind of go in these like breath work type patterns. So your body is just feeling a very pleasant, like gentle massage experience, but your physiology is actually changing based on the rhythm of those sound waves. So we're super excited. Like there's literally no studies on them because they're brand new. So it's fun to be able to do. It's kind of where the float tank was like, we saw this with Mark's group. And then like a month later, we had one installed at Ohio State football to figure out how it's working, because like there's huge buy-in from both organizations of like, we will do anything to help our athletes and operators. All we need to hear is that like Virginia Beach people love this thing and it works really, really well. And we want more evidence about it and we want to understand more about it. So let's translate that to athletics, where, and that was the foundational relationship between athletics and military was, okay, athletics, we're pouring several $1 million a year into the technologies and people to run technologies and data analysis on 1,000 athletes in 36 sports at Ohio State. We have predictable actual quantifiable outlets. So like track and field, they're doing repeated races at 0.02 seconds per race. Like, you know, things that we can actually predict to. In the military, you know, that's a huge challenge of like, what is performance? How do we define it? How do we measure it over time? So now if we can do these studies to understand how recovery relates to performance, or recovery relates to injury risk or subjective or mental health outcomes, like we've got all that data in athletics that we can study that translate that back to the military. So it's a really nice, just like crosstalk of, and I love the anecdotes. Like if I have a set of operators that say, hey, we have a line out the door for our red light beds, like that's a data point that's super important to me, because they can do anything they want or nothing if they want. So that tells me it's doing something. So now let's have a conversation, dig deeper. Can we like craft a clinical trial out of it?
Yeah, and from my experience, I know from yours probably too, working with highly specialized units in the military is an arduous task. It can be very difficult, just based on their deployment schedules, their training schedules, and you know the key was you can't interrupt training, minimal interruption in training. But with the athletes you're working with, they're easily accessible in most cases. You still can't interrupt the training program, but you can. It's just easy to access that population, get a lot of data points. And as you said, there is a very positive correlation between elite athletes and what the military is doing. So there's definitely a crossover after you do data analyses based on the type of recovery modality that military group is working with or using.
Yeah, and so we've set up this really nice infrastructure where I've got labs at Ohio State, still have labs at Air Force Research Labs, and those are like very well controlled exercise physiology labs where we've got all these recovery modalities out, and we got wet flow tanks, dry flow tanks, red light therapy, cryotherapy, sauna, vibroacoustics. We've got everything at both labs. Now we can actually recruit, like at FRL, we recruit active duty Air Force. They're there, They're training every day. And we can have very, very controlled like clinical trials to understand. Like we just finished one up in red light therapy, a whole body red light, analyzing the data now. It was like a 2-year study. Like, what if you do red light therapy 3 times a week for 3 weeks? Like, what are the effects on your overall inflammation, oxidative stress, blood biomarkers? That was, but we have to do that in a controlled environment. We can't do that with athletes, can't do that with operators. It has to be very, very controlled. So the upside is we get tons of data, mechanistic information, but they're not as stressed as, or they don't have the same type of stress as special operators or athletes.
Right.
But we can answer those questions there. Same at Ohio State in our labs. And then the translation engine is at Ohio State. We then take that to athletes where we have less control, a little bit less context. But that's what we want to know is like, okay, now you're a highly stressed athlete who's got academic demands, emotional demands, physical demands, cognitive demands, like all of those kind of things wrapping into it. So we can translate it directly to them. And it also shows like operational validity. One of the studies we published last year was we have 2 float tanks in football and 2 in Olympic sports. And we've got a iPad kiosk outside of each one of them and just simple athlete check-in, how you feeling pre and post. And after 2 years, we had 2,500 float sessions that were done. And we're able to capture that subjective information. A lot of them were Oura rings as well. So we can look at, if you float today, what's that do to your sleep at night? And so this is just natural like data that's being collected on standard operating procedures. So like zero cost from a research perspective. Obviously there's an athlete cost, but it just kind of shows that. So then we can take that, show that to the military and say like, hey, this is really important information. It was very easy to acquire. Here's how you can do it, and set them up with this like research light. And really it's what I've been really excited about over the last couple of years, especially with athletics, is like it took us a decade from that first meeting you and I were at until the point that we're at now. But we've got teams and we've got coaches that understand what a control condition is, like how important that is. And then if they come to me with a question, like they had one where it's like they were just interested in blood flow restriction, like passive BFR post training, like, is this effective or not? And I said, well, here's a literature review of it. It's like, there's some evidence that shows it might be, but this is not in your population, not in your sport. So I can say like, maybe it works, but if you're okay with that answer, then take that answer. But if you want to know if it really works on your athletes, here's a design where we can work around your training schedule. So you can have like training on Monday, regular training the rest of the week, identical training next Monday. And we just have a control condition, just say like half the athletes are going to get it and half aren't, and then they'll cross over and do the other. We'll do a couple additional measures. And now I've got a controlled study and I can give you like fairly definitive results of if that works with your athletes or not. So that's it seems simple, but it took us a decade to get that far, but like just getting them to understand that and then just showing it's not that difficult. It takes a little bit of effort, but the amount of information you get out of it is pretty powerful.
Phenomenal. Yeah, Josh, looking back, tell me if you agree with us. When we were in AFRL, coming up with all these crazy ideas, I won't say crazy ideas, outside the box ideas, right? That people really weren't thinking about, or they may have been thinking about them, but there's just not enough evidence and let's stay away from that. But we were allowed to do that type of research in AFRL. But looking back now, we were about 10 years ahead. We were far ahead of most people in regards to, we're actually starting to gather some preliminary data on these types of recovery modalities.
I think so. And I'm sure other people are doing really fun stuff as well. But I think it was that having those groups with that mentality, and it really was Special Operations Command, like all the different units we worked with, and then athletics. Like it took two organizations that were willing to only take a risk in regard to like time and money. Like nothing that we studied, like that's usually the first thing, like, are there any negative sides to this that we can tell? And the recovery stuff, it's like, I mean, some of them maybe, and we'll stay away from it, but like flow therapy and red light, they're like dig in the literature and see like what's out there. Like there has to be something there. But we also took some leaps and said, like, again, we're getting stories, anecdotes from all these places that there's something there. And it literally is just, some important people that are just like, yeah, let's do it and let's try it and let's see how it goes. So, but it always takes that type of person to be able to, let's take a little bit of a calculated risk. Again, it's just like money and time was a main factors there.
Correct. So far with your preliminary data, I know you don't have a conclusion yet on the whole body red light therapy versus using a red light therapy hand piece where you can place it, 1 to 2 centimeters above the musculature in that specific area that you might have had injured, or that's, you have delayed onset muscle soreness,
yep,
et cetera. What have you found so far? I know you're still analyzing the data, but what's it looking like with the whole body red light therapy?
Yeah, what I could say that we have definitive evidence on is like back to the work we do at validating wearable devices. Now we actually ran a validation study on red light therapy devices because they have to, now there's tons of them out there, beds, handhelds, blankets, all sorts of things. Fundamentally, it's still red and infrared wavelengths. Like those are pretty hard to mess up. What can be hard to mess up is the power and the irradiance. So
right,
they get the wavelengths right, but then the number of photons have to be able to be right. So we actually did tested all sorts of commercial products to just see like irradiance is the physics factor behind its millivolts per centimeter squared. That's just the number of photons per surface area. What we found is some of the handhelds, like the panels, like the popular ones are Juve and Platinum LED, like those actually put out equivalent number of photons as the $100,000 beds. But to your point, like the trade-off is you're only doing it a certain area of your body. So it's not like a holistic treatment. And the mechanisms behind it with mitochondrial repair and ATP production and energy enhancement and pain reduction, things like that, like you're going to get it more on a holistic whole body. But still, if you've got an injured area, if you've got a wound, like it's great for that. So you can put it on that for an extended period of time. They're also more accessible. I am intrigued about like kind of where things are going with potential like wearable form factors for red light therapy, because that now tells me I still love the $100,000 beds. I think it's great. You get that 360 degree around your entire body. It's easy. It's like almost a meditative experience too, because you just relax. And like, that's what I want people like meditating or just like not being on their phones and these things. Like that's a good thing as well. So like, yeah, we're analyzing the blood now, but like subjective information that we have is, and this is my personal experience with it, is like, I get this energy like this gradual energy enhancement. I don't know if you've tried it before or not, but
I have. Yeah.
It's like a couple hours afterwards, I just feel like I have more energy. And the data that I love from it, these are papers, I mean, dozens of papers that were published a long time ago, was like to your example of like a quadricep. So they would just take like clusters of LEDs and put them on a quadricep muscle, and we do preconditioning, which is you do it before maximal exercise. So you'd put it on, you could placebo it, so they didn't know if it was on or off, so they could wrap it, put it on the quad, and then just do a maximum contraction test to failure. And what all of the studies showed is if you do that preconditioning, you actually get an acute performance benefit. So you're acutely stronger, and your muscle damage markers 24, 72 hours post are lower in the preconditioning condition of if you didn't get it, the placebo. So that makes me think about military applications where if you've got a 24-hour ruck or something just massive that you're going to endure, like doing this whole body photobiomodulation is going to prepare your body to maybe be able to perform a little bit better, but it's more that recovery, that 24, 72 hours later. So that's kind of where I want to take next studies is, does that prove out that you can recover faster from a really, really vigorous, like military type operation? So back to answer your question, like I think there's utilities for both. We've got handheld devices and panel devices, and like, yeah, if you have a pain area or if you've got big muscle groups that you're going to be working out, like there's ways to do it. It's just the convenience factor to a bed of just 15 to 20 minutes. You lay in there, you get some relaxation at the same time, but it's an investment, right? That's 6 figures. And, but it's
Absolutely
pretty common. Like pretty much every high performance place has them now. And like, that's really where the research needs to go, is more in the whole body. There's more than enough evidence of like red light therapy, just mechanistically, and even applied settings with just like different muscle groups. But now the paradigm change is like, now you can do the entire body. So what does that get us?
And it's also, Josh, isn't it based on the timing? I go out and do, a half marathon, I finish it, and I don't want to wait 24, 48 hours later. The sooner I can get in to a red light therapy bed, the better. And then it comes down to also the frequency. I can't just go drive down the road and go into a recovery studio where they have a red light therapy bed and pay $100 and just do it one time, right? So is there any literature on that? Like, I need to do it consistently 3 times a week, and then after I finish this high intensity type training, there's an optimal window of, I need to get to this red light therapy bed to recover. And then I need to do it for X frequency, how many times a week should I do it, and for how long? Is it 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Have you come up with some just generalized prescription for, let's just say, a mid-distance runner or an ultra athlete, or in this case, Ohio State football player?
Yeah. So I think like dosage and timing is where the studies need to go. There's a lot of studies out there that are a handful of them, I guess, that have looked at timing of it, like around the stress. So if it's a marathon or whatever, and then what they've shown is that preconditioning is most effective. So you want to do it actually before that major stress event. So there were studies that did like before versus after, and then before and after. And what they found was the before only had the best results than even the before and after, which I don't quite understand that one, but that at least tells me that I think it's effective both ways, but it's going to be more effective if you do preconditioning. So I try to always educate athletes of like, if you're going to do it, ideally you do it before a training session, before a game. We have a lot of athletes from like other organizations too that like just have to get it before a game. Like basketball, some teams we work with, like that was definitely had to get in it. It's just got part of the routine. And then I think to your like, how often do you do it? I think of it as for a high stress population, like military operators, it's a maintenance protocol. So it's like 2 to 3 times a week, just be regular with it, because the amount of stress that they're going through physically and psychologically and everything, like that's when they need it. They just need that as their regular kind of maintenance recovery, because they're always on, they're always training. With athletes, some of the stuff that we're working on now is recovery periodization. So if we think about a football team over the entire course of a season, like you've got phases, like when we're in winter conditioning and not practice going on, like one of the philosophies is to not withhold recovery, but like not promote it as much, because you have time. Yes. You want to adapt. So you're lifting a lot of weights and you're working out. Do you actually want that muscle damage? You want that inflammation because you're in a growth phase. When we get into the season, that's when you get more in that military, like maintenance phase. Like you got to be available all the time. You got to be available for practice, for games. You got to get the pain down. So that's just a different philosophy. And then, I mean, we've been doing periodization forever and strength and conditioning, but that's a new thinking about. Is like, you really should be periodizing recovery as well, because like people like me, I don't need to be doing PBM 7 days a week because I'm not physically stressed. Like I do a maintenance kind of 2 or 3 times a week, because it's like at my age, it's good for inflammation and just overall like health. So I think there's other applications to it as well. It kind of depends on the situation. There's some good literature on dosage from an energy standpoint. So, I think it's like 30 joules per, I'm going to mess up but there are like kind of known, or agreed upon dosages like per muscle group. And then we can kind of back that out to like, okay, if it's this many joules, then we have the area. And so now if you're in a whole body bed, like some are more have more radiance than others. So, but that's kind of where it's where we need a lot more work, because now it's like everybody just says like be in this bed for 20 minutes, like that's the dosage, but all the beds have different radiances. And
Yes.
dude, I firmly believe that everybody's got their own. Everybody's going to respond differently to all of these things. Like we're already seeing that in our data. Like we're doing a lot of Bayesian analysis these days, because to me, it's absolutely not. Does a flow tag work? If it's P.05, yes, it works. If it's P.051, it doesn't work. Like that's ridiculous. It's not a yes or no. It's like, who does it work for and how well does it work for each individual? So now we can run like back to that, applying, like ideally we've got people wearing sensors and we got data every time they do these recovery things. So then we can know so now if we've got 6 different modalities, now I can know which one you respond to the best for each given situation. So ideally what I want you to walk into a recovery room and I know a lot about you physiologically and I have some subjective information. Like we've got these kiosks right now that just say like, how you feeling right now? Like heavy legs, sore, pain, stressed, can't sleep. And then it can actually, based on how you subjectively feel, then ideally we've got some physiology, we've got some nighttime heart rate variability or sleep and all that. Now can I actually guide you towards these 2 modalities versus these 4? And on top of that, a lot of it is like preference and probably placebo effects going on. Like I know that I love, like, man, I got to get in a vibroacoustic, like that's my favorite thing now. So like, I just know when I need it and when I want it. And so we also want to take that into account, like, especially if you hate something, like if you hate cold plunges, even though I know it might be good for you, but if you hate it, like, am I going to actually push you in the wrong direction because you hate something? So taking athlete beliefs and placebo is a real thing. Like if you feel better, like at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make people feel better. So if I can make you feel better and ideally know the physiology behind it. So very long story short is like where we're headed is we want to get really, really prescriptive for each person. And to do that, I need to know what they believe in, what they like. I need to know how the physiological response to each one of these different things, because I know everybody's going to respond a little bit differently. And I also think like me, I'm going to respond different every day. So I may respond to vibroacoustic awesome most of the time, but maybe I'm not in a state to where that's going to be the best thing for me today. So we're not quite there yet, but we're already seeing in our studies, like we're doing studies with the shift wave vibration share and the SAVA and all those different things where like running a Bayesian stats, like we know the people that are strong responders, kind of medium responders and non-responders. It's very clear to us. So now can I do that for everything in there? So that's kind of what we're trying to create is like, we're there, like we're almost there. Like we've got the physiological data streams. We've got abilities to do kiosks. We got now with AI, that really helps us a ton because you need to synthesize a bunch of information instantaneous. And you need to be able to say like, I need to take, so instead of just, because what we did before AI was like just and you were part of this, like these simple decision trees, like if HRV this, then this, if sleep this, then that, like that's a starting point. But now if I want to take in your physiology that just came in and your surveys and your schedule and your periodization, and I need to be able to ideally like just type into a agent that we've curated it and say like, this person just showed up, this is how they're feeling, what should I do? And it synthesizes all of that. So you could do that on your own. It would just take you an hour per person and they're standing right there. So with AI, done carefully, like make sure we curate it perfectly and we validate it and all that good stuff. Like that's our next game changer of being able, so the path is there, but we still have to knock off a bunch of things to get that to completely work.
So, this is sort of like it's very important. I love that you said individualized, because it used to be, well, we want to know what the group does as a whole, right? So you'd aggregate all the data for one group and say, well, this group's doing better than this group and they scored this and this group 2 scored here. But to your point, the individualization, because the human body is not a complicated system, right? It's not like the motor that's in a car. It's a complex biological systems with a lot of interactions going on across, the endocrine system, the metabolic system, the immune system, the respiratory system. They're all interconnected and interacting. And, the individualization of, well, we can create, it almost sounds, Josh, something like a human digital twin is something that we're moving towards. We're not there yet, where, I have my baseline and I have all these physiological inputs. I have my testosterone, free circulating testosterone, biomarkers for each of the physiological systems. And then when something goes wrong, my hematocrit has increased. How does that going to affect me going out and training today? And then that is then the digital twin that goes back into the baseline digital twin. And then that says, okay, now we're going to change your training program to X, Y, Z. You're going to do lower to moderate intensity, right? Reduce total load. And then here is evidence-based recovery modalities that are also individualized based on your condition. So I think it's moving towards that, what we call human digital twin. There's a lot of people out there don't like using that term, and it's more of, well, we'll create a digital twin for one part of the human body, for the heart, for the brain. But I think it's eventually going to move into a whole body type digital twin, where that, as you said, using AI would change the entire training paradigm. And there's more individualization on, well, what evidence-based recovery modalities work best for this individual digital twin that has changed based on these physiological signals or biomarkers that feed into the digital twin. I think
you're exactly right. And that's where we've kind of been heading to philosophically, is that digital twin concept. And I think back to where we started in decision trees, like that's really paper and pencil and diagrams is all that is. And it's, again, you're just assuming everybody, if HRV does this, then go do that, which is way more complicated than that. Like, it was a decent starting point, but yeah, it's like, I'm so over like frequentist statistics of like, did it work? Yes or no? Like, nothing is yes or no. It's like how well, like maybe it doesn't work at all for somebody, but it's got to be individualized. And we're definitely there. And it is like, it does require AI to do it, and not because we can't figure it out, but because of the speed at which this needs to happen. And you need to do real-time data analysis and get answers in real time, because the state of sports science generally is like, you do training session, you get, then like maybe an hour after the training session, you get your report of what happened in the training session. And that's just typically in athletics, like that's just GPS data, because everybody's watching chemicals and things like that, which is just a proxy for mechanical load. Like, it doesn't tell you anything about, like, it just tells you how much this sensor moved and how fast it moved. It doesn't tell you anything about like what did the body have to go through to produce that work? Like, what's the muscle damage associated with that? Absolutely no idea. Like, it's not measuring.
None.
But we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on it every year. Like, it's a good data point. But so I'm glad you brought up blood biomarkers with testosterone and all those other things, because I think that's the next frontier that's going to really enable the digital twin. Is like, heart rate variability is an okay metric. Like, I went from being a complete homer on it back when we started, of like, this is the be all end all, to now it's like, no, it's a very broad stroke of stress and physiology. Like, it could be associated with a lot of different things. It's a great data point to have. It doesn't tell you anything specific. So we need to layer on much more specific things. And I'm pretty convinced blood is going to be the thing that's going to unlock a lot. And I say that because, like, where continuous glucose monitors have come, like, $1 billion industry for diabetics, but now you can buy them for performance optimization and nutrition. And yes, just glucose, and it's confounded by food and sugar and stuff like that, but it's real-time biomarker assessments for the first time ever. Like, the first time ever, where we can overlay heart rate and glucose and cognitive tests and things like that. We've never had that before. So then what's coming next? Lactate, maybe. Cortisol, maybe. Testosterone, maybe. What does that do to our, like, it's a paradigm. Like, we have to change the way we think about things, because it's a new data source we've never had. And like, when I think of like the future of athlete recovery, like creatine kinase, CRPs, things like that, like, there are some teams doing it now. I've actually been doing it for quite a while. Like, they'll do finger stick CKs like 24 or 48 hours post-match and dictate recovery off of that, which is effective, but it's like, it's still not really in the States. And like, you still have to poke your finger, which is okay, but like what if you have that continuous data, and then you can really dial in more specificity. So I think the tools and technologies we have today are way better than they were 10 years ago when we started buying Adidas watches and stuff that you wore for hours.
Yeah. Remember those days? Yeah.
But they're still broad strokes, and it's definitely better than nothing, but it still does, like, it gives you a general idea what's going on, but it's not giving as much specificity as we need. But that's where I think CGMs and what's next will really unlock a lot of things for us.
And yeah, in those biomarkers, that's to be a non-invasive way you collect that data. Where finger stick, okay. But hair, salivary cortisol, you take hair samples now. So in all these biomarkers still exist. So you're not recreating biomarkers for each of the physiological systems. They're already out there.
Right.
And we know that they tell us a lot about that system. It's then taking all those biomarkers and looking at, okay, well, there's 10 biomarkers that can predict how the endocrine system's doing, but then creating a hierarchy of what are the 2 or 3 best, and then taking it a step further, we have to make it non-invasive. You can't tell the athlete get in a car and go to a blood bank and have their blood drawn. Like, it's too expensive and it's too invasive. But I think, to your point, we're starting to get there, and this development of the human digital twin I don't think it's that far away. There's a lot of people out there that believe it is, but I don't think we're too far away from having, in the medical care field, a human digital twin at baseline. Well, I go in today and I'm 57 years old. You're going to take blood biomarkers that represent each of my physiological systems, some physiological markers like resting blood pressure, active heart rate, resting heart rate, HRV. So I'm getting some physiological signals to look at my autonomic nervous system. And then, so those all values are normal. And then now I go out and I start, training for a marathon. And after about 6-7 weeks of training, my physiology's probably changed. Maybe my testosterone's gone down, my metabolic system's been disrupted, and now I'm getting those continuous inputs, and it's updating that model as I'm training, which is going to affect how I'm going to train week 7, week 8, week 9. I don't think we're too far away, Josh. I don't think we are at all.
Yeah, I think there's going to be levels to the digital twin too. Like, for sure, we can already do some like lower fidelity digital twins, because it's also going to require, like, what's the twin for? What's the application? Just like we do with anything. It's like football players are going to need to wear different sensors to get different data than I do, than a operator does. And like, it depends on the application. So we need to figure out what those signatures are. And then, like, what I think about is the more and more information you have, it would tell us probably the twin is going to be more accurate, or even like not even twin related, but just like any intervention we want to apply or anything you want to do, like, that's going to be dependent on the amount of data you have to lead you up to that decision. And not in the military world, like, not everybody's going to get this complete pack. Like, say we can measure everything at all times. Like, there's going to be same thing in athletics. Like, your $1 billion NFL franchises are going to have access to things that like a Division III football team is not. So we have to figure out like how those models exist when you're missing big chunks of data. What does that do to your model performance, and just kind of understand that. So there's something you do today for sure with it. But then what's like the holy grail is like even us, like if you had all that information and you can simulate different nutritional interventions or different training interventions or different recovery things to like, could you actually see what's going to have the best effect on your physiology 10 years from now? If we think more of like our age of like, what's my ideal nutrition pattern that I should be doing for longevity and health? Like, if we could do stuff like that, which, I mean, I think you do a lot of that, which is with blood biomarker panels, but that's kind of where I think the application is. That's what we try to, at my organization, Ohio State, is like, now we're trying to take a lot of our findings and, let's just say, elite performers, and how do I translate that to all populations too? Like, to the other end of the spectrum is like clinical diseases and people that are really struggling for quality of life, to people in the middle. They're just kind of normal working people that want longevity. Like, how do we take insights from all of these different things? And that's what I love about recovery modalities, is like flow therapy is like, it can be amazing for a lot of different people for a lot of different things. Like, it's been studied in chronic pain and PTSD and anxiety and all the way up to high performers. There's a lot of these things that like, I'm itching to get these modalities into I don't even know if it's alternative care. It's more just like functional medicine. Just places like, why shouldn't we be offering photobiomodulation for chronic pain patients? Like, it just needs to be more accessible. Like, it's getting there now that we have like spas. Like any city, you can kind of go do it, but it's expensive, and so now it's really like, how do people access to these things?
Yeah, I think it'll be a while for that, Josh, because of insurance. It always, in the medical field, goes back to, well, will the insurance cover this? Well, of course, the insurance isn't going to cover something to help prevent disease.
Right.
I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
We should have these available where people, it is covered, and they can get these non-invasive. Some outside physicians are already using the red light therapy beds in their medical centers. Yeah. But those are more like the DOs that, more naturopathic medicine. Yeah. They still prescribe meds, but it also, what are some additional non-invasive recovery modalities that could help with your specific medical condition, right? And there could be some synergistic effects from that. We're just, I think the medical community will eventually get to it. I think it's going to be hard because the insurance companies, basically they don't want to keep you well. The insurance companies want to make you sick, more sick. They don't want to do coverage. There's no preventative medicine out there. Our country's more of reactive. Let's wait until you have this condition, and now we'll treat it, but it's a little too late now, right? Yeah. So I hope that, some of the work you're doing it is beginning to cross over. I'm not saying it hasn't, but there needs to be a lot more of that. I'm hopeful that happens. So Josh, with recovery, what recovery trends are popular right now out there, but still need more evidence, do you believe? Like maybe 2 or 3, recovery trends that, seem to be the hot topic right now, are popular, but, they still need more evidence, but people aren't really looking at the evidence, the empirical evidence.
Yeah, I might be trapped in my own algorithms on this too, but I do feel like there's like a increased optimism in some of these things, like when you read about, or just like people doing cold plunges and saunas, and now red light is kind of becoming the big thing. And like kind of what I feel the trends are is like, this is more like that vibroacoustic therapy, and companies like Shiftway that we're working with that are just kind of blown up pretty quickly. Lots of buy-in from, military communities and athletics, and like lots of people, again, good anecdotes behind it. Those are so brand new. Like this concept of, sound therapy isn't brand new, but like there still aren't a lot of studies in that. So it's now that thought of like, if I add a sensory input, we call it sensory enhanced mindfulness, and we lump float in there too as well. But like, that's where I think there's a lot of promise and there's a lot of opportunity, but it just hasn't been studied because it's brand new. But again, fundamentally, like all the research we look at to design studies is meditation and mindfulness. That's what makes you feel good about it, is we know how well those things work. And we know there's enough evidence for that. But now as like, how do I get a 18-year-old athlete to sit and be mindful? Like, impossible. But if we have a dry float, if we have a vibration bed, like they love those pretty much across the board. And at the same time, you're really teaching them how to be mindful and how to meditate. So that's what I'm excited about. That's a little bit more niche. Back to like the hot and the cold stuff. Like, again, there's enough overwhelming studies on sauna, but I love that it seems like it's becoming more of a trend, even though it's been studied for hundreds of years, and everybody in Finland lives forever because they sauna since they're 2 years old. But those longevity studies out of Finland are so great. It's like, that's what, honestly, I read one of those a couple of years ago, and I sauna 6 to 7 days a week ever since I read that paper, because it was all-cause mortality reduction. It's the ones that are super popular. All-cause mortality reduction, cardiovascular risk reduction, Alzheimer's, dementia. Because like, holy cow, that's pretty amazing. Like, there's enough evidence to it. So that I don't think needs more evidence. I think what needs evidence is infrared saunas, because that's another like biohackery thing. And unfortunately, they're like, and I bought one too. Like, they're a lot cheaper, and like just plug it into a regular outlet. They just don't get nearly as hot. So they only get to like 150 degrees Fahrenheit. All the great studies are the Finnish ones that are 180, 190. degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a big temperature difference. So I want to see, we just got these set up in our lab. So we're going to do a study of infrared versus traditional and look at heat shock proteins and things like that. So that has to be done because that, for some reason, that one hasn't been done yet. To the cold stuff, like I think it's got its applications, but now we're kind of studying the whole body cryotherapies versus the cold plunges versus like different ways to get cold therapy. So I think those need a little bit more evidence too, just from a longevity perspective. I think there's enough in sport to show, like, typically soreness reduction is the biggest thing that the cold water stuff does, and internal core temperature stuff too.
Josh, there are some health clubs. In fact, the health club I go to has a cold plunge.
Yeah.
So they have the hot tub.
That's right.
Then they have a cold plunge at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and another one tank next to it at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And you see these people, I'll talk to them, there's several elderly men there that are probably a little overweight, and they swear by, well, when I do the cold plunge at 50, 3 to 5 minutes, and then follow with a hot tub and do 4 cycles of that, I notice I'm starting to lose weight. So in regards to the temperature of the cold plunge, and then after you do cold plunge, going into, like a hot tub for 3 minutes, and then back to the cold plunge for 3 to 4 minutes, what is there any evidence out there that 3 to 5 minute time frame and then going back from hot to cold, or just you don't really need hot, just do the cold plunge? Is there any evidence out there, empirical evidence, that it helps with reducing inflammation? And I don't think it helps with weight loss, but maybe I doubt it though.
Yeah.
In regards to how many minutes should I be in the 50 degree? Is it 3 minutes? Based on, if you read the instructions, it says, well, don't do it more than 5 minutes at 50. Start out at 1 minute and then gradually go to 2 and 3. Well, do you guys use this at Ohio State? Do players use it and come back to you and say, oh yeah, it's the cold plunge, hot, cold plunge? So there's a cycle that they actually use, a prescription that they believe helps them.
Yeah. So like in athletics, like the athletic training staff and strength staff has those protocols dialed in. Like contrast therapy is super common. And that's like, again, it depends on the application. So for athletes in certain situations, that contrast of just that flush, you're just getting that flushing. The vasoconstriction, vasodilation is the switching back and forth. That's just flushing the system out. Like pure cold, a lot of times we'll do, like athletes will do that, like summer practices, post practice. Like point of that is let's get the core temperature down, because you've just been at it 90 degrees for 2 hours. That's part of it. And then just like, you also want, it's that maintenance phase of like, you got to move tonight and tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and you just crush yourself out on the field. So I think there's definitely athlete protocols. I think for like people our age and like even older people at your club, depends on what you're trying to do. Like the weight loss thing, like maybe there's papers out there of like brown fat and increased metabolism if you do these things over time. I think of like for health and wellness applications, when I'm trying to tell somebody how to like start cold plunging or start sauning, it's really just like you've got to get your body used to it. So like cold plunge is a very shocking experience. It's got mental health benefits, and like even like some older folks, like I've noticed my joints and my muscles, like they just feel way better if I do it multiple times a week. Like it's that just muscle inflammation and tissue inflammation reduction that's there. So if that's what you need, that's what you need. But when it comes to like sauna and cold plunges, to me, it's about accumulating time. So like my sauna is, I do it 30 minutes. Mine's at like 205 degrees Fahrenheit, which I just got lucky and found a club that had one super hot. Yeah. But I accumulate time. So I can't go all 30. Some days I can only do 10, so I'll go 10, and then I'll take a cold shower and get back in just so I can like make it through that accumulation of time. But it's always about like easing into it. And if you've never saunaed before, like that could be like, that's to me the application for infrared sauna is for like, maybe it's cardiovascular risk people or older people that like, we don't want to throw them into 200, like never throw them right into a 200 degree and say good luck. It's
yeah.
Like if you can only take this, you can only take that. I think it's still going to have some benefits. But yeah, to your point of research, like I don't know that there's studies out there that have definitively shown like this temperature versus this temperature versus that temperature. I know most athletics tubs are like 50 to 55 Fahrenheit, but then, you have the personal ones that you can take whatever, like, get them down to 30 or 40. or take them up higher. I think it's just about honestly, it might just be about like what you find works for you and what makes you feel better. Like I just feel every time I get out of the sauna, I feel like a different person, and it's just my reset. And it's like, that's my personal experience behind it. So I think it's kind of finding like what works for you, what makes you feel better, and then like figuring that out for yourself. I don't think
yeah. And I think there, as you mentioned earlier, in science, we don't like that placebo effect, but when, you talk to an operator or a football player, basically, if you say, if it's tricking your mind into believing that and you're going out performing better, so be it. Now, when we do the study, we're not going to be able to look at that. But yeah, there's probably some individual placebo based on, as you said, I feel better when I do it. It's a preference that I have.
Yeah, I've softened a lot on like starting out when we started first. Like I was like, I have to have definitive evidence. I want a physiological marker. I want this, and this.
Yeah.
So where it's like, again, if everybody's feeling better, and if you feel like you're performing better, that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day. Like I do want to know physiologically what's happening, and can I get more prescriptive about it? But if I feel better doing this thing, I'm going to do it. Like that's super unscientific and like not the scientific method, but like, what are we really trying to do? We're trying to get people to feel better and perform better.
Now, last question, Josh, on sleep. A lot of people have trouble with sleep. Even the physician I go to says, hey, Reggie, do you know of any technology that can help with sleep? And I'm like, yeah, there's a thing called alpha stem technology that we use at Center for Entrep. You basically clip it to your earlobe that sends low frequency electric currents to the frontal lobe of the brain, and it helps reduce your sympathetic overdrive. Because a lot of people, we always talk about, well, you just need more sleep. Well, it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
How do I get more deep, rapid eye movement, REM sleep? What have you noted any technologies or using any at Ohio State to help induce a deeper sleep? Because I'm based on the evidence, I don't think you need 8 hours of sleep. A lot of people say, oh, you need 8 hours. Well, there's a lot of evidence out there. People that get 6 hours of high quality, deep sleep are functioning just fine. So can you kind of go into that a little bit on what technologies you found to help with that, and how you work with these athletes on, how do we get you to sleep and put you into deep sleep?
Yeah, we phase it from simple to complex when it comes to sleep. And so we obviously ideally we'll use like some sleep tracker. But again, these days, like I went into it I want all this sleep and sleep physiology data to predict how you're going to perform. But now it's like, how do I use these tools, a ring and a watch or a band or whatever? How do I use that as a biofeedback tool? Like, how do I enhance the education we're giving you with a tool to like really craft your experience through it? So now it's much less about, I don't really care what individual numbers say exactly every time. I want you to use this thing to make good habits and dial into your sleep. And so we take it very, very simply with an athlete or anybody, and we just give them the math of, if you spend 5 hours in bed, it's mathematically impossible to get 8 hours of sleep. Like stupid math, like nothing, no stimulation, no nothing. You just need to kind of understand that is like, and I agree, like everybody says the 7 to 9 hours, that's again, population specific. And I don't think it's like, that's a pretty generic recommendation. I think everybody's kind of got everybody knows when they feel their best, like how much sleep they get when they feel their best. And so I think it's trying to figure out what that actual sleep need is for yourself. Some people may be on the low end. I think everybody needs to get more sleep. But so we start there with the simple math. And then, okay, once you fix that, once you're physically in bed for more than 7 hours, we got the first thing checked off. And then it's like, how do I get that efficiency up? So how do I make sure that the time you're spending in bed, you're asleep more than you're awake? And these tools can give you efficiency numbers pretty easily. So again, that's very simple, like sleep hygiene stuff and temperature and mattress and calming your mind and like non-technology stuff like that. And then it's also like optimizing your circadian rhythm. So if you can go to bed like within the same 30 minutes and wake up within the same 30 minutes every day, as many times as possible, you're going to maximize your circadian window. But then like, okay, once you've nailed all of that, then I think technology has a place. And the things I'm excited about are like the temperature controlled mattresses, like 8 Sleep and Chili Pad. Like those are a game changer because that can dial in a very specific temperature for you. again, you can learn like what temperature gives you the best response and what do you feel better. The stim stuff I'm super interested in. Like Matthew Walker just released a product called the Somnee, SOMNEE. It's the same concept as AlphaStim. It's an EEG headband that does stimulation before you go to sleep to try to get you to sleep faster. I'm intrigued by the ones that also do EEG and can stimulate when it knows you're in a deep sleep through EEG. That's the only way you can do it. You can't do it through these wearables. Then it will do stimulation during deep sleep. So I think if there's a potential to get deeper sleep, then that's like stimulating during those different phases, I think. But one of the things that even Matthew Walker's book said pretty eloquently is like your body's going to take what phases it needs. So like you can't take a supplement and get more deep sleep. Like your body's going to take what it needs. So you just got to give the best way to get more deep sleep is to get more sleep. More REM sleep is to get more sleep, and your body's going to take what it needs. So I think it's really just about how do we make sure we get you enough sleep to what's personalized to you and the most efficient sleep possible through all of these different tools.
Dr. Hagen, I want to thank you for being with us today. Really interesting stuff. I could probably talk another 2 hours with you. We'll have to have you back on again. How do people, if they want to reach out to you, get more information on recovery science, where would they go? Do you have a web page or a Facebook address, et cetera?
Yeah, we've got a webpage, so OSU or hpc.osu.edu, but you can email me at hagen.112@osu.edu, and we can definitely connect that way.
I want to thank you, Dr. Hagen, for being here, and I hope our audience got something out of this because we've talked about a lot of innovative technologies out there that are being studied. I always enjoyed working with you at AFRL, and glad you found your passion, and thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, it was a blast, man. Appreciate you.
The Human Odyssey is presented by Sophic Synergistics, the experts in human-centered design. Find out more at sophicsynergistics.com. Get smart. Get Sophic smart.